Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Namaduhu nasalli ala Rasul al-Kareem. Viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The verses that follow, that is 222 onwards, relate to the married life of a person. Marriage in Islam is a matter of great responsibility, and the Quran goes into great detail with regards to family matters. And in fact, in order to understand these verses of the Quran, one has to go into the Hadith and the life of Rasulullah, who is the model person. One cannot understand these verses without the life of Rasulullah and without the Hadith. Many people make this mistake. They try to understand the Quran just by reading the Quran itself or the translation, and they get a completely wrong understanding of Islam. So the translation of these verses, 222, goes on to say, they ask you about menstruation. Say it is hurtful impurity, so let women alone during menstruation and do not go into them until they are cleansed. And when they have purified themselves, go into them from where Allah has commanded you. Truly Allah loves those who repent, and He loves those who purify themselves. Your wives are a tilth for you, so go to your tilth as you will, and send good forward for your souls. Fear Allah, and note that you are to meet Him and give good tidings to the believers. It's important to note that the Quran mentions this fear Allah many times. And one has to keep in mind that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching all the time. There's no time when a person is not being observed by Allah. And the person who has the fear of Allah will do the right thing. A person who has the fear of law, for example, will only do the right thing when he knows he's going to be caught, when he's going to be observed, and a case will be brought against him based on the evidence. But a person who has the fear of Allah, he knows that he cannot hide anything from Allah. So the Quran mentions this so many times to make people understand that there is no time when Allah is not watching, and a day is coming when they will have to appear before Allah individually and give account of what they did in this life. This is very important for people to understand that the Quran teaches this consciousness, the awareness that Allah is all the time present. Verse 224, and do not make Allah through your swearing by His name a hindrance to your being righteous and observing your duty to Him and putting things right between men. Surely Allah is all-hearing, all-knowing. Once again, Allah is all-knowing, all-hearing. This is repeated so many times to make people understand that they cannot hide anything from Allah. A day is coming when everything will be brought in front of them. The eyes, the hands, the ears, everything will testify, and a person will not be able to deny anything. Like in this life, people go to courts and they have to prove, the lawyers have to prove through evidence. And sometimes the decision is, many times the decision is wrong because the evidence is made up because of wrong, lying witnesses or whatever other reason. But in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is not possible. As a court where the judgment will be based on complete evidence. The person's body parts will testify, and person will not be able to deny anything. Verse 225, Allah will not call you to account for that which is unintentional in your oaths, but He will call you to account for that which your hearts have earned. And Allah is most forgiving, most forbearing. This verse tells about the hearts of the people, and Allah knows what's in the heart. So our tongue and other parts, they may say the other things, but the heart, Allah knows what's in the hearts. A person will be questioned. So we have to purify our hearts and make sure that whatever deed we are doing it for the pleasure of Allah. This is what Islam teaches, that a person's life is a life of responsibility, a life of duties. Both the men and women have duties. They have different duties, but they have duties to Allah, they have duties to each other, they have duties to society, and they will be questioned about that. The people have to keep that in mind. This is real education, because this life is going to end sooner or later. And the life that's going to begin will depend upon how the person used this life, how the time was used. Time is very important. It's the most important commodity in this life. And the shaitan, the devil, wants to waste people's time and get them involved in things which have no benefit, in most cases, even in this life. So his goal is to keep people involved in useless things, and he uses his time and has regrets on the day of judgment, how much time was lost in doing things that have no value in the sight of Allah. Verse 226, those who swear to abstain from their wives must wait 4 months, then if they revert, surely Allah is oft forgiving, most merciful. These are the rules relating to the divorce. If divorce is to be done, then it has to be done in a certain way. 227 goes on to say, if they resolve on divorce, surely Allah is all-hearing, all-knowing. 228, divorced women shall keep themselves in waiting for 3 menstrual courses, and it is unlawful for them to conceal what Allah has created in their wombs, if they believe in Allah and the last day. And their husbands have a better right to take them back in that period if they desire reconciliation. And they, that is the women, have rights similar to those of men over them, according to what is equitable, though men are a degree above them. And Allah is almighty wise. In order to understand this verse, one has to look at the life of Rasulullah, because a lot of people who are reading Islam and looking just at the translation or just the verse of the Quran will misunderstand this verse and come up with things that are completely against Islam. This verse and many other verses of the Quran can only be understood in the light of the Hadith, the Sunnah, the life of Rasulullah. And it would be a big mistake just to take verses of the Quran and try to understand them, which a lot of times people do who do not have the background. So this is to tell them that if you want to really understand these verses, you have to do more research and look at the life of Rasulullah. He spent 23 years explaining the verses, explaining the revelation, and his life has to be seen in order to understand the real meaning of these verses. Verse 229, divorce is twice, then either retain her in an equitable manner or release her with kindness. And it is not lawful for you to take back anything of what you have given them, unless both fear that they may not be able to maintain the limits set by Allah. And if you fear that they may not be able to maintain the limits set by Allah, then there is no sin on either of them in what she gives up to secure her release. These are the limits set by Allah. Do not transgress them. And whoever transgresses the limits set by Allah, those are the wrongdoers. And these are matters of Islamic law, the Sharia. And people who are trained in Islamic law, people who have spent their lives researching and studying, they are people who should be consulted on matters like that. And of course, in Muslim countries, there are courts that resolve these issues. So a common person is not supposed to read these verses and then make decisions based on his or her understanding. Verse 230, then if he divorces her a 3rd time, she shall not be lawful for him thereafter unless she marries another husband, And if the other husband, divorces her, then there is no sin on them in returning to each other if they think they can maintain the limits set by Allah. These are the limits set by Allah. He makes them clear to people who have knowledge. This is for the experts, people trained in Islamic law, who will explain these verses when or if a situation arises. Just like in everyday life, people go to lawyers, and the lawyers explain to them the meaning of the law or the interpretation of the law. The one should not take up, because these are matters relating to the Sharia, to the laws relating to marriage, and only trained people who are experienced can give decisions. 231, and when you divorce women and they reach the end of their term of waiting, then either retain them in an equitable manner or release them on equitable terms, and do not retain them in order to hurt them and transgress thereby, and whoever does that has wronged himself. And take not the commandments of Allah as a jest, and remember the favors of Allah on you, and that which He has sent down to you of the book and of wisdom, admonishing you thereby. And fear Allah, know that Allah is aware of all things. Once again, it says at the end, fear Allah, and know that Allah is aware of all things. The bottom line, main thing to keep in mind is this is not a joke. These are very serious matters, and people must take great care, precaution, that they are not crossing the limits that Allah has set for them. Verse 232, when you divorce women and they reach the end of their term of waiting, do not prevent them from marrying their husbands when they have mutually agreed between themselves and in an honorable manner. This is an admonition for him among you who believe in Allah and the last day. That is more virtuous for you, and Allah knows and you do not know. Verse 233 talks about the rights of children. Mothers shall suckle their children for 2 whole years. That is for those parents who desire to complete the period of suckling. It is for the father of the child to provide for them and to clothe them in equitable terms. No soul shall be burdened save to its capacity. No mother shall be made to suffer on account of a child, nor a father on account of his child. And incumbent on the father's heirs is the like duty. But if the couple desire by mutual consent and consultation to wean, then there is no sin on them. And if you desire to get your children suckled by a foster mother, there is no sin on you, provided you equitably pay the foster mother what you are to give. And fear Allah, and know that Allah sees the things you do. The fear of law is not mentioned here. Is the fear of Allah, because the secular system works on the fear of the law, that if you violate the law, then there will be consequences, and the consequences are immediate. In the case of Islam, Allah is talking about the consequences that will come. Sometimes they come in this life, and sometimes the judgment is postponed. The consequences will come because Allah is the best of judges and the perfect, a judge of perfect justice. This reminder, and almost throughout the Quran, about Allah is saying has to be, this is the spirit of Islam. The emphasis is on the next life. That next life is the life where all these things will be placed before Allah, and a person will have to give an account. So verse 234 goes on to say, and those of you who die and leave wives behind, their wives shall wait concerning themselves for 4 months and 10 days, and when they reach the end of their term of waiting, there is no sin on you for what they may do with themselves honorably, and Allah is aware of what you do. 235, and there is no sin on you if you hint at a marriage proposal to such women or hide it in your hearts. Allah knows you will remember to speak to them, but do not make a contract with them in secret, except that you speak in honorable terms, and do not resolve on the time of marriage until the prescribed term is fulfilled. Know that Allah knows what's in your hearts, so beware of Him and know that Allah is oft forgiving, most fair, most forbearing. There is no sin on you if you divorce women while as yet you have not touched them, nor fixed for them a marriage portion, but bestow on them a suitable gift, the rich according to his means, and the poor according to his means. A gift of a reasonable amount is an obligation on the righteous. Just look at the detail in which the Quran goes with regards to marriage, with regards to the rights of men and women, with regards to the duties to the children. But once again, one should not forget that these verses cannot be understood by a person who does not have the knowledge of the hadith, who does not have the knowledge of the sunnah, does not have the knowledge of the life of Rasulullah, because he's the model person. If a person is trying to understand, he will not get an understanding according to the Quran. His understanding will be very different. This is a very common mistake many people make. They pick up verses from the Quran and they give it the meaning they would like to give it. And they mislead many people. And a lot of Muslims have been misled by these so-called scholars who pick up verses from the Quran and try to interpret it according to what they think they mean. Verse 237, and if you divorce them before you have touched them, and you had already fixed for them a marriage portion, then give half of what you had fixed, unless the women forego their right, or he forgoes in whose hand is the marriage tie, and gives the full portion, full marriage portion, and that you men forego is nearer to fearing Allah. Forget not to be generous towards one another. Surely Allah sees all that you do. The moral of all this is that one needs to have a very, very detailed knowledge of the family law. And some places they teach a full course. They teach, the scholars spend many hours going through explanation of these verses. A person reading the translation should be aware. And one of the reasons for doing all this is to make people aware that just looking at the verses of the Quran, many verses, and trying to understand it directly without the help of the life of Rasulullah, the hadith, the sunnah, is not a very, very good idea. One should consult the experts to understand these verses. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give all of us the proper understanding of the Quran. Wa akhiru da'wana in alhamdulillah rabbil alameen.